Man, what a morning, folks. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. Just getting things underway for the feedback loop. Trying to take a look at our queue. It looks pretty light, just between you and me. Looks like we've had quite a bit come through in the last couple of days. So appears like we're on the backside of a surge. Last Wednesday was the peak. Thursday was the peak in meetings. Now we've just kind of doing some cleanup as we head into the weekend. Hope you're doing well where you're at. Yeah, I hope you're doing well where you're at. There's we move from one crisis to another, it seems like, and global pandemics still raging. Now we've got great racial tension on top of that, and justified, by the way, completely justified. But if you're here in the States, take it easy this weekend. Take it easy this weekend. Knock out a few exercises. Ping me if you want to collaborate. Like, you have questions. Like put that energy somewhere positive. How about that? Rather than all of the negativity that's going on, like, out there-ish. Because there's a lot of upset. There's people upset everywhere, but it's playing out on TV right now. And you know what? The situation there in Minneapolis is not great. And I got a lot of friends up in Minnesota. The guy who gave me my first professional gig works in Minneapolis now. And it's and I've got another number of colleagues that have moved to Minneapolis. The Star Tribune, which is a newspaper up there, Parks, Rice, Spiker, Crutchmer was there for a while. Just a lot of great people working in that area, and it's you think about them in times like these. I've got friends down in Louisville too, and Louisville's also struggling. Kind of an afterthought in what's happening up there in Minneapolis, but still equally bad. And like I say, put all that energy into your work. Like, focus on building up, improving. I'm here to collaborate with you, and hopefully everybody can have a successful, safe weekend, away from all the madness that's going on. And hey, still supposed to be socially distancing, folks. We're not supposed to be gathering in large crowds together because there's still a pandemic going on. Yeah, good times. So, CouchBot's fired, so I'm going to go ahead and get this underway. All right. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. It is time for the feedback loop, where I take your submissions and give you feedback on them. It's a light load this morning. Light load. Kara is in here. She had a chance to go through some of her branding exercise, and she's just getting that underway. As we work through this, Kara, I do want to take a second to bring up the branding exercise inside of the Fresh Market project, because let's see, project there we go. So I do think it plays a role in getting things underway. So let's go ahead, and I need to move my screens around once again. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. So we got Project Fresh Market here, and where Kara's at, she's down here in this branding exercise, and basically the concept here is we are wanting to we are wanting to apply the we've done some exploration where Kara was trying out different color palettes, different typography to kind of determine what the general feel is that where she would like to go, and now we're applying it using this exercise. Um, so she's created a new project for the wireframe. We're wanting to create 3 versions of the homepage, and the idea here is that you're going to try to push your solution into different areas so that you have the opportunity to really, while you're focusing in, there's still a bit of exploration in the application of the typography or the color palette that you've created. So it's now about, okay, how does this work as it's being applied to like the homepage, and we're using the homepage as kind of like that test swatch before you paint a wall. We don't want to paint the entire project. We want to just test it out and see, because the homepage has a lot of things on it. It has a navigation, it has buttons, likely has forms, it has a footer, it has a lot of things that are going to appear on other pages. So it's a reasonable place to begin your exploration. And then the concept here is you're going to create page. You're going to export those to create pages that could appear in Usability Hub, and we'll be utilizing Usability Hub to create a preference test, and that preference test will allow people to basically vote on the solutions that you've come up with. So Kara's just getting this underway, and I wanted to take a look at her Healthy Eats page because she had some interesting questions about how close do you have to stick to this wireframe. And what I will say is that as you're doing your work, and keep in mind, this project's been going on for a while because we're kind of moving at a part-time pace. So there's going to be a lot of influences that are coming in from different places. Also, the tone of the world has changed, and maybe your competitors have migrated or moved, mainly because they are maybe they're featuring touchless delivery or whatever has changed in the time since you began this process. But you may have some concepts that push beyond the initial wireframe where you were at, and I think it's okay to modify. Remember, part of this process was the audit, and in the audit, you were going through and taking a look at what things need to be improved as you move forward, because you put this through user testing before. So what I want to do is I want to try to come in and find your journal. Let's go back to the audit. So here's the audit. Edit style, forms, labels outside. So that's something coming directly from the UI course. User states and interactivity will be taken into account so the user can clearly understand when their actions are being taken. Okay, so there'll be feedback in like the buttons and things. Need to consider feedback and confirmation. There needs to be more obvious communication product once it changes. So that's kind of the same. Notable. Let's change that. Notable example of this is when the user edits and saves a meal. Okay, that's later downstream. When a user signs up, plan selection should be default. Okay, we've talked about that. Meal selection is default to start. Okay, so this is kind of like how the page sets up as you get there. So there's not a lot in here about edits to the home page. But as we zoom out, we kind of get the first look at version 1 of your the application of color and type. And what I can say just at a glance is that right now, when we think back to the examples we looked at for color at work, they most of them were not as vibrant as what you have here. And what I mean by that is, like, your orange, right? Like, if we look at this in zones, your orange is clearly the lead, okay? So the base, the key color for action and for the brand is this orange, okay? And then it shifts into really more of a complementary scheme, where now we've got this blue, and the blue's got an interesting dilemma in that, and there's some sort of spacing between here that's not present here. I'm not sure. I'm gonna try to figure that out real quick. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening there. So there's just a little bit of spacing. These two align, but this one over here does not. But as we look at this, I do have some concerns about the legibility of this this thin all caps against this lighter blue background. You might want to go darker, but going darker, it's like this background is just dark enough that going darker on the typography might not necessarily be a great legibility fix either. So there's something to look at there from just a pure legibility perspective. You know, I do know if you went with like a light gray here, that would clean up. But again, maybe just going with a lighter blue, maybe going with a bolder header. You know, there's some sort of solution that's here. This right now is a trouble spot. So we got try a sample. Sign up is here. I'm that's I'm not sure if that's a sign up queue. About Fresh Market. So this is just the about, and then customers rave about us, and the blue is back, and then your bright orange is back for the footer. So like it's really hard to key in with the colors spiking up this high. And keep in mind, typically when color is spiking up like this, we don't have a lot of photography to work with, but you have really good photography to work with. So there is a question there, and I cover that. I talk about that over here. If we go into making your mark, I talk about the use of color, and we, if we go down, yeah, here we go. So I'm not concerned with what colors you choose. I'm concerned with how you apply them. When you want to draw a lot of attention, create energy, or when you have a concept that is hard to visualize, that's when you really land on big swaths of color, versus when you have imagery, color takes a back seat by comparison to when you don't have imagery. Like this is the only image in any of this is the cutout of the shoe. Everything else, it's really relying on color to push it forward. So when I come back over to yours, I see energy in the photography, and I wonder to myself, okay, so why all the color? I think you can simplify this. But you were asking, about, okay, can I come through and can I alter my wireframe? And I do think it's helpful to see kind of how others are tackling this. So just one example, Let's come over here and look at Eve's. So this is Eve's Healthy Eats, and Eve hasn't submitted her work to the feedback loop. We've been kind of working on hers each week in our meetings and to look at reviewing it there. So you might not have seen Eve's version of this, but Eve has as you work through it, you get this. She's updated the wireframes a bit. She's still like kind of working through the footer still, but every area of this wireframe was altered a little bit, and then as she came in and began applying, you can see that it like the entire hero unit here was altered significantly. But as you come through and look at the color usage, it's pretty subtle once you get past the yellow. Like the yellow is the clear lead, and it's finding its way down, and then it's like a subtle yellow is coming back in, and then she's brought back in the yellow again here, and there's accents like this almost maroon plum purple. I'll just call it plum. It's plum purple. It's acting as the action color all the way through. Right, choose a plan, see menu, learn more, get started, view full menu, regular size meal. So it's very clear. Her usage for the action, is very consistent, and I think that's where yours is actually. That is where yours is consistent, is in the use of the orange. Like I totally get the orange. The orange is what you're keen on. Like when you see that's an action. I think that's good. What you've got to do though is you've got to determine, okay, first how do I want to alter this? Am I altering my wireframe further? Like, are there things that I want to do to push this? And then come back and say, all right, I'm going to make those adjustments, but how am I going to focus this work so that I have a clear secondary, and my clear secondary is the yellow, the blue. I wouldn't go with the yellow and the blue. Okay, I would try to key it to. One secondary, and I think when you do that, you're gonna find success. The other thing I would point out is this is your lead for the page, and the About Fresh Market seems like it's just as big. Okay, so we're halfway down the page, and now we've got another lead. So, if this is your lead, I really think this has got to be secondary to that, and everything cascades in size down the page. So that, these labels are fine, how it works. Our customers rave about us. But, are you putting enough emphasis on try the sample? Because I don't really see how they're getting into the page yet. By comparison over here, start eating healthy. Looks like that might have moved around. But anyway, this is the early version of it. Start eating healthy. Then there's some secondary items. The classic get started. View the full menu. Here are the plans, and you can select one of the plans. This is more of a traditional getting in. Yours, Kara, has a lot more emphasis and oomph that needs to be put on this try a sample, but I'm not seeing the oomph. So I really would ratchet that up to really make it clear, hey, free food here, ding ding ding. And right now it's just playing back as just a regular old button. There's no emphasis put on that. So I think once you do that, it's gonna place a clear lead on this top section, but then the rest of it needs to be altered to pay homage to the top. The other question I had, well, I'll leave it there because I know that you've got versions to create here, and I am curious to see like how this proliferates out. Just checking feedback if something popped in, or I thought something popped in. Did not. So again, I would like to see as you explore your other options, how this modifies. I do think that you should keep this as an option, like just like boop, done. That's option 1, and then iterate. So option 2 would be what? You've got your selections over here. You've got your palette. I don't think that you have to necessarily, if you like this palette, I'd stick with this palette, okay? But I do think that you know, an alteration of the usage of the palette is necessary to show variation, because when you put this up onto Usability Hub and you say, hey, is it 1 or 2, you need to give them a choice. There needs to be a clear choice available, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and shift gears, because yesterday I was working with Melanie, and Melanie, I do apologize. I did not see your like signal for help during the afternoon. I had calls with Luigi and Eve and Lisa, and I missed your call for help in the midst of that. But we were doing something yesterday where we were putting password protection on Melanie's static portfolio site. So I want to go ahead, I'm going to shut that down and go live with the site so you can kind of get a sense of where she's at. So this is Melanie's site. And the idea here is that she's got, say, this case study, all right? And when you click on this case study, this is handy. Well, what if we wanted to put handy behind some sort of password protection? Okay? Typically speaking, that isn't something that just out of the box is easy to do, or actually it is easy to do, but it's not very clear how you might go about doing it. So we were digging around and we found a password protection for static pages on GitHub, and we were looking at this. And actually, I want to star this because I think it's really clever how it was done. It's last updated about a year ago, 2019, so it's not super old. And essentially, how this works is you have an index.html. You can name this anything you want to name it. We're going to call ours password.html. Okay? And when we load up password.html, it's going to have a form on it, a simple form. We're not going to style it. Or maybe we will style it. Maybe we'll just copy the whole thing over today, just for this example. And then when we hit password.html, we're going to load it in the browser, and then we're going to enter the password that we want. And it's going to say, nope, you don't have the right password. But what it's doing is actually setting up the permission to give you access later. That's something that I didn't quite understand as I was working through this, because I didn't understand how it worked. Okay? But this is using something called sh1 hash. And if we look at sh1 hash, and I know the more visual designers here that are watching this are going, what are you talking about? sh1 hash is a password generator. Okay? So you basically say ABC, and you say generate, and it kicks out a string that looks like that. So if I said 1, 2, 3, it kicks out a string that looks like that. All right. All this is doing is it's generating a hash, that is this, from any string. You don't really need to know more about it than that. Just know that whatever text you enter here gets generated there. All right. Let's go with that for right now. We're going to go back to Melanie's page. Actually, we're going to go back to the GitHub. And what we need to do to get this underway is we actually just need the HTML. All right, and the HTML that is here is super simple, like styles inline. All right, there's nothing more that we need, and this is the form that we will be entering our password into, and it will say wrong password if it is incorrect. We will be utilizing jQuery, and then we were going to be utilizing this sh1.js located right here, and that is the thing that's going to generate the hash. And then there's this wee bit of JavaScript right here, and basically that is what will check to see if our password is indeed a wrong password, or if it's going to validate. And if it validates, what it will do is it will take you to the page. Let's go ahead and just copy all of this. And I'm just going to do this like that. I always hate it when I copy more than what I was going for. But we're going to come over here to Melanie's project, which is here. And now I'm just going to create a new file. I'm going to call this password.html. It'd be really great if I could type that properly. HTML. We're going to paste that in. I'm going to get rid of this GitHub thing at the bottom. I could clean this up. It would be fine. I'm just going to save it for right now. I'm going to come back to her homepage, and in the index, I'm going to find that handy project, and where she is pointing to her case study. So she's got Trial Spark in there, and that's the footer. So right here is handy. It is pointing to handy.html. Instead of pointing to handy, I want this to point to password.html. Okay? So we're going to come in here, and we're going to go back to Melanie's page. I'm going to refresh it just to make sure. I'm going to hit View Case Study. And now instead of going to handy, it's going to this password page. All right? So I'm going to enter this password, and this password is going to say, I'm just going to call it awesome. Or, sorry. The password is awesome. I'll hit enter. And it says wrong password. What happened? Well, it did exactly what we wanted it to do, because it generated a hash for us. This is the hash for the word awesome. Okay? So I'm going to copy that. And again, this is in the instructions. So if we come back here to the instructions for this, it tells us straight away that it's going to say wrong password. Don't mind that. Copy the section of the URL after the hash sign. Create a folder with that name next to the index.html file. All right, so in the orientation of the directory structure here, at the same level as password.html, we need a file. So I'm going to say new folder, or we need a folder rather, and I'm going to enter that hash. So that hash is now here. Okay, same level. It's not in a folder by itself, but the password.html and this hash exists at the same level. Now I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this one handy.html. All right, now I realize I've got two handy.htmls. One is in this folder though, all right? And I'm going to come through and I'm going to copy everything that's in handy and put it here. Now I should be able to just move it right over, and initially this is going to break. And you say, why, Chris? And I'm going to say, well, it's because it's in a folder. Okay, so I have to give some instruction for the CSS to navigate. I'm not going to change all the images that aren't going to show up. Okay, just know that some of the images are going to look broken, but at least we've connected back to the CSS. So now we've got our hash, we've got handy inside of that, and we've set up the hash, so the password should work. We come back. We go back to the home page. Let's go back to, okay, so we're back on Melanie's home page, right? Right. I'm going to click on View Case Study. And if I recall, this is called Awesome. I'm going to hit Enter. And I did something wrong. Awesome. It could be that I did not call this index.html. This is a, so I'm going to rename this to just index.html instead of handy. Let's see what happens now. And okay, so it has to be index.html. That is a change that I attempted to sneak through there that I didn't do yesterday. So index.html has to be the name of the file that is within this hash. So if we get rid of that hash, we go back to the home page. What happens if I enter the wrong password? So I'm going to enter Chris. So I'm just my name. I hit enter. Well, it generates a new hash. Okay, it generates a hash. That's not going to work. If I enter rabbit, generates a hash. If I enter awesome, it goes through. What the hell's happening? How is it storing the password? This is a static page. There is no database. How is the password being stored? And the answer is it's not being stored. All that's happening is this hash is being generated. So if we go over here and hit awesome, you'll notice that the hash that is generated here, pay close attention to like the first 5 characters here, 03D67. 03D67. Okay? If somebody can magically guess that the password for this page is awesome, then we've got trouble. Okay? But unless they can, like, so what I'm getting at is don't name your password something super obvious, like the name, like if like Melanie, for instance, if Melanie named her gave the name of this as Melanie, that would be bad. That would not be great. But and if she said it was called Handy, that wouldn't be great either. But so long as you enter a word that you can give to a client or somebody who's wanting to see these password protected files, you can do this. And this is great also if you're working on a project for a client, but you're wanting to protect the client. You can just say, yeah, and your password is your name or whatever, and they can enter the password. All it's doing is checking. It's creating the hash out of the password, and then saying, is there a folder inside of this thing that I'm looking at that matches this hash? And in fact, there is, because you've already created it. And then it lets them through. And if there's nothing that matches that hash, it just creates a new hash, as we've seen before. If I type in hash, it created a hash for what the word hash would be. That also means that if I decided that I wanted multiple files in here, all I would have to do is set up different passwords for them to exist. So you can have, pairing off this password.html, as many of these files as you want. All you have to do is have unique passwords for each. So, Melanie, I know that you were having trouble with this yesterday, and as you saw, I managed to put it in the ditch like within 2 seconds because I decided to get cute and I named this Handy instead of index.html. And it does turn out that in fact that instruction was specific. It has to be index.html. You can read more about it here. If there is a directory listing, like if I somehow went through and said, hey, show me all the pages that are inside of this project, that would be a problem. So This doesn't work if I can go to Melanie's GitHub account and see the GitHub account. So if your portfolio is not private on GitHub, somebody could go to your GitHub and then look and see, oh, well, there's this hash right here, and then access the file that way. But by and large, this is enough protection. And the other way to do this is just to make your portfolio private, so people can't go looking at it. You know, they have to literally go through the GitHub.io or the URL that you've created. But I think that was, if you have questions, more than happy to help you walk through this. This is something that I will be recording a more nuanced video for, because I do realize that there are multiple people in the community that, you've got portfolios. Sometimes you want to put that work behind some sort of password protection. This is typically one of the big concerns I hear from people with regard to why they want to go use like a Squarespace and, $18 a month versus, hey, I just showed you how to do it for free. I think this is the way to go instead of using the Squarespace. And of course, this I've had people say, "Hey, can you actually style this up to where it doesn't suck?" And the answer is, yeah, you can style this up to where it doesn't suck. You can style this with CSS just like you can any other form. So there's no issue or prohibition on doing that. This is just the GitHub repo for this particular thing. Okay. All right. And that is going to wrap us up for this morning. Again, there's a lot of different things that you can be doing this weekend to improve your positioning. As it's really clear the market's reopening. Hiring is picking back up, and now we need to really kind of refocus on, okay, how do we get ourselves best positioned for the job opportunities ahead? I think that each of you are making big strides. I am absolutely certain that coming out of the global lockdown, there's going to be more opportunities for you now as experienced designers, because everybody's thinking in terms of, okay, how does my experience need to change to match this new environment? And frankly, stay inside for a while. There's lots of bad stuff happening out there. There's still a pandemic going on. Wash your hands, maintain social distance, and ping me if you have any questions, and we can jam on something to get you pushing forward for the weekend. Plenty of exercises, plenty of projects, and I'm just here to help you grow. All right. So for New Pragmatic, I'm Chris Courtney. This has been the Feedback Loop, and I will chat with all of you again. Actually, I'll see a couple of you in a little bit, like an hour or so. But I will chat